Konnichiwa, Nihon Cricket Pod de Yokoso. Welcome to the Japan Cricket Podcast. I am your host, Alan Kerr, and with me, as ever, from sunny Melbourne is Todd Luckhurst. Hi, Todd. How are you?
Good, thanks, Alan. Good to be here, and we're going to have a nice chat about the JPL draft, which was held last week.
It was. Was it last week? It feels like it's so long ago already. Um, there's so much to do, and it feels like it was forever ago. And that's my excuse for not being able to remember anything about it, I think. But yeah, fair bit to go through. And I think since I was hosting the draft, I'm going to throw to you, Toddy, and you can go through what happened and see. I'll see what I can remember.
Sure. All right, let's get to it. So we had obviously the draft last week. So we'll go through the teams. So there's five teams in the JPL. We've got the Kansai Chargers, captained by Declan Suzuki. North Kanto Lions, captained by Rayo Sakurano Thomas. East Kanto Sunrisers, captained by Kendall Katawaki Fleming. South Kanto Super Kings, captained by Saborash Ravichandran. And West Kanto Hurricanes, captained by Wataru Miyauchi. So do you want to run through what the how it all went down, Alan? So what were the rules? So we had the
Yeah,
four phases.
yeah. I think the rules are probably the best place to start because I have had some feedback from guys who were watching along saying that it was a little bit tricky to follow exactly what was going on. Myself and Daniel did go through that right at the start, but we probably should have reminded everyone after each phase as a tip for next time. So five teams and four phases. So phase one is retentions. So the captains of each team are kind of automatically retained, provided they're available, and then they get to work with the coaches on three other players that they wish to retain. Every team has to have five under 23 players in their squad, and they have to have picked three of those under 23 players by the end of phase three. Um, so phase one is retentions, phase two is star players. So only one player per team in that phase. That's a pretty short one. Phase three is then players who have to be picked up. So that is predominantly national team members who are either national team members as it stands or people who are trialing for the national teams. Because ultimately, the Japan Premier League is a pathway to the Japan national team, and it does act as a trial. So Japan eligible players who are basically trialing for squads, high performance squads. So all of those players have to be picked. And then phase four is essentially your Japan Cup players. And there are a few players in phase four who may well be trialing as well. And like some people were told, we can't guarantee you a spot, but you can enter the draft and you either get picked up or you don't. If you do get picked up, or sorry, if you don't get picked up, then you're welcome to be around and potentially act as a reserve player, which has happened in the past. We've had a couple of the under 19 boys, particularly just sort of floating around and they end up getting called into a squad because it's a lot of cricket over 3 days and some of the bodies are a little bit brittle. So there are a few guys who break down, and even if they're not, particularly if they're bowlers, the young kids just come in and can be a net bowler as well. So yeah, that makes up phase four is Japan Cup players and a few of those guys as well. So every squad is 15 players, and within that, there's also the extra options of the cards you can play. So every team has two right to retain cards. So what that means is if someone selects a player in their draft pick who played for a different team the previous season, you have two opportunities to say, no, thank you very much. I want to keep that player. If that happens, it means you skip your next selection in that particular phase, and the other team who lost out on that player gets to pick again. So I think there were times throughout the draft where I think Kansai had to make three selections in a row or something because their players that they kept choosing kept getting retained, and that tends to happen in the early part of it. And once all the right to retain cards are used, things go a little bit more smoothly and make my life as host a bit easier. The other card they get is a time extension card, where I think every draft pick has 45 seconds to be made. but you are allowed to play one card where you can extend that time for an extra 1 minute to consult with each other over the phone before deciding. So I think that's all the rules. Anything I missed, Todd?
No, that's spot on. I think, Alan, I think that's all we had. So we'll go through the phase one selection. So obviously the captains were retained. So East Kanto Sunrisers, Kendall Kadawaki Fleming, Abhishek Anand, Ben Ito Davis, and Shoma Sagaya Slater. Kansai Chargers, Declan Suzuki. Then we had Abdul Samad, Alex Patmore, and Makoto Taniyama. West Kanto Hurricanes had Wataru Miyauchi captain, Jake Kusudanan, Kazuma Kato Stafford, Lockie Yamamoto Lake. North Kanto Lions had Rayo Sakurano Thomas captain, Korshan Kulasaria, Kazumasa Hiratsuka, and Muhammad Gufran. And South Kanto Super Kings had captain Sabarash Ravichandran, Charlie Hurricanes, Kiefer Yamamoto Lake, and Kohei Kubota. No real surprises there, Alan.
Not really. I guess the only surprise was that Ibi Takahashi wasn't retained by East Kanto, but I guess they always knew that they would use their right to retain card. I mean, you look at those players in East Kanto and they've got, Abhishek Anand, Shoma Sugaya Slater, and Benito Davis. I think all very established members of the Japan national team, as is Ibi Takahashi. So I think it was a case of, right, we want all four of those guys. But whichever one we can't pick in as in phase one, we'll just grab with our first right to retain card. So I think they were sort of locked into that. But it was interesting the tactics and decisions that got made. I mean, for South Kanto and for West Kanto, they each retained two players who are under 23s, which meant they didn't really have to worry too much about under 23 players in phase three. They're always going to pick up at least one of them. And indeed, South Kanto, I think, had all of their under 23 sorted out by the end of phase three. I think they were the only team that went into phase four not having to think about under 23 players at all. Whereas East Kanto, for example, were picking under three. East and Kansai actually were picking under 23 players in the last rounds when they had to pick under 23 players. They had no choice. So interesting strategies from the retentions. And again, I quite liked what South Kanto did, that they basically just retained four bowlers. So they were pretty solid bowling attack straight away with Charlie Harahins and Sabarish, the captain, providing the spin options, and Kohei Kubota and Kiefer Yamamoto Lake providing the pace options. They were pretty well set up. They didn't really have to worry too much about bowlers, really. Probably want a couple of extras, which you're inevitably going to get. But that really allowed them to focus in on their batting, which I think they did pretty well.
Yeah, so then we moved on to the second phase, which was the pro players. So there are five pro players. Each team had a pick. So the first pick was West Kanto, and they picked the Sri Lankan ex-Test captain, Dimath Karunathre. Oh, sorry, Alan. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's pronounced different to how
Karunaratne.
it's spelled. It's spelled different. Yeah,
Karunaratne.
that's the one. East Kanto Sunrisers picked William Basisto. North Kanto Lions, Patrick Dooley. South Kanto Super Kings, Josh Brown. And the Kansai Chargers picked Karan KC, the Nepalese superstar. So, it is what it is. I mean, there's five pro players, and everyone had to pick one. I was surprised Josh Brown got picked up fourth. I thought he might have been picked up a bit earlier, the big hitter, especially because he's
Yeah, I
been
think
before.
that's
But
endless,
I think
really. Um,
South Kanto are pretty happy that he dropped down to fourth.
yeah, I think they probably were. I think maybe Brownie's was it two or three ducks he got last year? I think maybe that counted against them. Still's got 100, mind you. So yeah, that's probably worth touching on as well. How the draft selections were made. So last year when we did the draft, it was a very simple case of the team that finished last the previous year got first pick in the draft. But after that, Dougal came up with a sort of mystery system to make the rest of the draft picks fair. So, for example, if you've got particularly good players in phase three, you can get the worst of the pro players who's still going to be really good, but then you get the best of the next players. If you just do that sort of, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 way of doing it. Um, so what he did this year, which I thought was really clever, he came up with a system which had different sort of weightings on when you got picked, when your picks were in certain rounds, and he gave a choice to the teams that in order that they finished last year. So South Canto came fifth last year, and they got to choose which draft selections they could have. So they actually only picked fourth in round one, but they got the first pick. Sorry, fourth in phase two, but they got first pick in phase three, which I think is specifically what Sabarish wanted, and we'll perhaps come to that in a moment. Whereas it meant that I know North Canto, I think came fourth last year. They just kind of picked middle row every time, and the others are naturally all a bit all over the place. So that was how that selection got made. And yes, it was interesting in that, I think West Canto were very keen to have Dimmoth. They're coached by Duncan Harrison, who knows Dimmoth from his club. And I think that's obviously where that connection came from, which enabled Dimmoth to come over for this tournament. So they very much wanted him. I think perhaps the biggest surprise was East Canto going for Will over Brownie. Will is obviously a terrific player. I don't know how much you followed his career, Todd, but I mean, he captained the Australia under-19 team. I think we mentioned he's got an incredible record at the under-19 World Cup. He actually scored 100 last week in the Western Australia first grade Shield final for the team that he captains to win their first grade. So, yeah, he's in a bit of form, and he's played against Kendall a few times, and he scores runs and he bowls some pretty handy off spins. So I think that's why Kendall went for him. But then he does also have Ibby and Ben. If you take actually Benny Tor Davis, who bat pretty well and bowl some handy off spins. So he's no shortage of options there. I thought they might have gone for Brownie as a guy with a track record in Japan and Kendall's mate, but I guess there might be a bit of banter over the dinner tables in Sano over the course of the weekend as to why Brownie slid down to fourth in the draft. But I think that the others, I think North Canto were very specific that they wanted a spinner, and that's why they picked Paddy. And from South Canto's point of view, yeah, with Josh still being available when it got to them, I think that was just a no-brainer for them to pick him up, which meant that Karen was the last pick. But I mean, he's the genuine all-rounder of that group. So I think any of those guys could have been picked up in any order. And they're all going to bring something unique and special to their teams.
Yeah, I thought the same. I thought that it was going to be interesting to see who picked who, but realistically, you're getting a pro player, so I don't think it's you're not going to lose out at any stage of any picking any of those players. So then we moved into phase three. So I'll run through the draft order. There were 25 picks. So we had South Kanto Super Kings picked Isan Raman, East Kanto Sunrisers picked Ibi Takahashi, which I think was picked by Kansai Chargers, and East Kanto was a right to retain.
That's right. He was definitely retained. That was done immediately. So if we just scroll up, yeah. So I think the order, South Canto got first pick in that round, and they picked Eastern Ramen straight away. And I think that was very much the strategy from Sabaris, because you're not just getting Eastern for this JPL, right? He'll be a player that they retain in the future, I'm sure. He's come in, he's really made an impact for the Japan national team over the last 6 months. He's a quality player, and I think Sabal took the view that whichever pro player they got would be pretty good, and they would then get Eastham in as their first pick in that phase. And then I think it was West Canto, yes, who tried to pick up Ibi and or actually may well have been Kansai, sorry, yes, because that's right, because Ibi was retained, and then West Canto retained Hugo Tani Kelly next. So Kansai suddenly was slipped down, having their first two attempts at picking someone were scuppered right at the start.
Yeah, it seemed like a bit of a tactic from Captain Declan Suzuki to get people to retain their players at the start. So he threw out two players, which I think he thought would be retained. The second one was Hugo Tani Kelly, who was retained by West Kanto. Then Kansai got their first player, which was Gabby Harahins. North Kanto picked Nikhil Pole. Kansai Chargers picked Alistair Katawaki Fleming. East Kanto picked Shima Fujioka Fletcher, who was retained by East Kanto. I'm not sure who, can't remember who
So this was the same thing having to go with North Kanto. So
North Kanto.
North Kanto tried to pick Shima, and East retained him, and then North Kanto tried to pick Dylan, the brother, and South Kanto retained him. So so again, the captain's left scratching his head a little bit after losing out on two players back to back.
We then had North Kanto picked Monty Harahins. West Kanto had the next two picks in Piyush Kumbara, good seeing back in the JPL, and Zabir Khan. We then had South Kanto Super Kings retained Marcus Thurgate, who was, I think, attempted to be picked up by East Kanto.
Yeah, East Kanto wanted to bring him back to his spiritual home. I think they needed a keeper, but South Kanto were like, no, thank you. We'll keep Marcus.
And East Kanto picked Tsuyoshi Takada. North Kanto, Manib Sadiq. Kanto Chargers, Ashley Thurgate. North Kanto, Kento Otadobal. And Kansai picked Supan Navaratna. North Kanto retained Chihaya Sakana, who I think was tried to pick up by West Kanto.
Yeah, West went after him, and North Kanto used their right to retain at a time when it was there. That meant they lost their last go in the round, which caused them a bit of consternation when they realised that they didn't get another selection.
Then West Kanto picked Manav Natharanjan. West Kanto then retained Ryan Drake after East Kanto tried to get him. So West Kanto retained Ryan.
Yeah, so
Then
that was
South
just to mention you. That was the Manav one was where North Kanto tried to use their right to retain card. So they tried to use their second card, but they'd used all their selections in that round, so they then could not use it. So it's funny, we're all new to the draft. It's only the second year doing it, and there are these little moments that happen where I was like, oh, I wasn't calculating quite properly there. So Rayo and Devon were left a little bit disappointed that they missed out on bringing Manav back to North Kanto, and West Kanto picked him up instead. And because of the way things had gone, it was twice in a row that West Kanto actually got two selections back to back. So Manav, and then they were able to retain Ryan.
We then had East Kanto picked Ryuki Ozeki. South Kanto picked the Mozzie, Masato Morita. And then East Kanto picked up Shogo Kimura. South Kanto picked up Ayan Wadage. And the last pick of the round was the Kensho Chargers, who picked up Keisei Oyake.
Yukai, yeah. Yeah, I mean, some
Right.
pretty decent players. I mean, I think it was that final round. East Kanto used their time extension card to try and decide which of Shogo, Ariane, and Keiichi they wanted. Eventually opting for Shogo. Decent players in that last round. There's three guys there who've played in under 19 World Cups, and the guy who's played for Japan, and then you've got Keiichi, who's shown over the last two seasons that he's a very capable performer at JPL levels. So I think the depth in this round was pretty good, all told. I think that it was something that we are really keen to try and do and make sure all the Japanese qualified players are playing in this tournament and are getting good exposure to a good level of cricket. And yeah, I think it's good to see all these guys getting to play for different teams and mix with different people as well and have different roles within their teams too.
Yeah, I think it's great that some players do change squads and get to play for other teams with different people. So that makes it interesting. We then moved into the last phase, which was the fourth phase, and there was a bit of I don't know what you call it, a bit of tension, Alan, because a few had to pick some under 23s, which they hadn't really realised that they were, that was part of the rule. Everyone knew the rules, but they kind of forgot. So there was a bit of scrambling, I thought, at one stage in the last round, which was good to see.
Not only that, but Sabaras Ravichandran decided to flagrantly accuse Dougal Bedingfield of messing up the order and pause proceedings for a good 2 to 3 minutes before he eventually realised actually the mistake was at his end, and offered a humble apology. So yeah, I think by this stage we'd been on the call for I don't know 45, 50 minutes maybe, and yeah, the last round of the draft is where it does get a bit interesting and people are sort of a bit flapping somewhat at what they need, what they still need in their squad, and what they've got, what they haven't got, and there's a lot of variables, in a thing like this with the retained cards and everything like that. So having to pick your under 19 or under 23 players, and yeah, it gets pretty hectic, but I think it's good. It's good fun. I think everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is good fun, but yeah, it does get a bit hectic. You've got to really be on it, don't you, to make sure that you have it all covered and, make sure you have enough batsmen and bowlers, spin bowlers, everything. So it's interesting. So the last round, there were 20 players picked. So Kanto Chargers, Dost Mohammed, North Kanto Lions, Alex Watanabe Dawson, East Kanto Sunrisers Chandama, South Kanto Super Kings Muhammad Ali, West Kanto Hurricanes Adil Khan, Kanto Chargers Max Yonakawa Lin and Isan Ula were both retained. I think East Kanto bid for both those players, their
Mm.
pick.
Yeah.
We then had North East Kanto Akash Gimray, then North Kanto retained Apapray Dewan after West Kanto put in a bid for him. Then West Kanto picked up Malinda Dissanayake. South Kanto picked up Buvith Kulal and Muditha Hashan. West Kanto picked up Mohammed Tabriz. East Kanto Sanam Lutal. North Kanto picked up Sora Ichiki and Hamad Zebaka. South Kanto picked up Gurman Singh, Kanto Chargers, Ulazia, West Kanto Hurricanes, Rahil Kano, and the last pick was East Kanto Sunrisers, Ula Sami. And that was the last pick of the JPL draft.
Yeah, it's handy having the stuff on screen. You can really see there that, as you mentioned, Kansai retained all of their right to retain cards for this round, knowing that there were a couple of players in the mix there that they could keep that they probably wanted. And so they were able to do that. And they were both under 23 players, which is interesting. So it does look like a bit of strategy was put in there. Meanwhile, you've got East Canto, both their final two picks had to be under 23 players. Um, and I mean, Kansai still had to pick one under 23 player right at the end. So yeah, it's interesting. There was a bit going on there, and lots of pretty good players left unselected. Ariash Waligay is one that stood out to me, and Abhishek Talang's a proven performer in Japan Cup. And then probably the other one who I think stood out for me, who wasn't picked, um, was Vikash Jar, who's always gone pretty well, and has played in the last couple of years. I think he played for South Kanto last year, and there's a couple of others as well. Safi Lukman, Siddharth Khatri, Pankaj Chand, guys who've played for Kansai in the past, perhaps a little bit unlucky not to get picked up. Juto Ball was, I thought, a bit of a wild card selection that someone might have gone for. So yeah, and it shows that there's good players on the outside, which I guess just shows that it's a good standard of competition, which is great.
Yeah, I thought there was a few well balanced squads, but I'd say there's always someone who misses out, unfortunately. But yeah, it was some interesting players that weren't picked up. So the JPL, do you want to go through the dates, Alan? It kicks off on May the 2nd this
May
year
the
on a Saturday.
2nd. Yeah. May the 2nd. So we'll play two games a day on each ground on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So 12 matches in total. We have kept the Tuesday morning as a reserve day. As you know very well from your experiences, Toddy, we do sometimes get a little bit of inclement weather in Sano. We're pretty keen not to have to cancel matches or anything else. So it's an extra national holiday this year because Golden Week falls over the weekend. So we've got an extra national holiday on the Tuesday. So we thought we may as well use it, have it up our sleeve just in case. I think that was a pretty sensible call. Hopefully we don't need it and everyone can have the morning off and celebrate hard on the night of the 4th. But if we do, then it's there. So yeah, plenty to look forward to in that tournament, and lots of good talent on show, and plenty of interest as well. We've got the umpires locked in. We've got Daniel Beswick, who hosted the draft with me. He'll be coming over. He's booked his flights. He'll be hosting the coverage and running the commentary. So exciting times, I think, and there's plenty of interest this year in this tournament from further afield than we've had in the past. So I think the sprinkling of stardust is working and catching a few people's attention from further afield than we have done on previous years.
Definitely, I think we'll get a few in the crowd watching this year with Dimuth coming over. I think the Sri Lankan population will be keen to come and see him have a hit for West Canto, which is very
Well, I hope
exciting.
so. A lot of those guys are based around sort of the Tochigi area, so it'd be great if they do, and we'll probably be reaching out to the embassies to let them know that we've got these guys coming over and that they should put word out to their communities to come and see them play. So we might have to be a bit stricter on the PMOA this year. Toddy, what do you reckon?
I'd have to.
Normally
I've got lots of
normally it's a bit
debate
of a
about
free for all, but yeah, we might have to actually give these guys a little bit of protection. But actually, it's one of the nice things, isn't it, about playing in this tournament? It's an opportunity to mix with the fans and to actually be approachable. Be from a cricketer's perspective, you get to rub shoulders with these guys, but the fans actually get access to them as well if they want to, as long as they behave themselves, as long as they're polite. I think that all the guys that we've got coming, they're the right sort of people who are keen to give something back to cricket in a developing community like Japan. So I think that they'll all be good value both on and off the field.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree. Be a good few days for everyone in Sano, and I look forward to the cricket. Hopefully, there's some good scores.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Have we got anything else that we need to talk about, Todd? What else has happened? I mean, the cricket season started last weekend, which is pretty exciting. I think this year we've really timed it perfectly with the sakura blooming and the cricket season starting almost exactly at the same time. So a proper pink start to the season. And plenty of runs as well in some of the competitions. I don't know if you noticed, but we had the first round of the Japan Cup. I think in North Kanto there was some really big scores. A couple of teams going over 200. Um, so yeah, lots of runs around as there often is on the fast outfields at the beginning of the season in Sano, and we had the first JCL match was played as well, and more to come this weekend. So if you haven't already got it, do download the Japan Cricket app to follow the live scores each weekend, and you'll get to see some of those players who we've just gone through. You get to see them in action in their domestic comps. So Todd, I'm going to put you on the spot, mate. Who's your pick this year for the JPL title?
Um, I think East Kanto are always hard to beat, but I don't mind the Kanto Chargers squad actually. I think it's a bit well ended. I like they've got some spinners and they've gone for a couple of fast bowlers. So yeah, I think they can go okay this year. But
Yeah,
East
well,
Kanto hard to beat.
finalists, weren't they, last year? East Kansai, it's the furthest they've got. I'm looking at South Kanto. I reckon they did the best job in the draft. I reckon they've got a pretty strong squad all set. They've got a couple of wicket keepers, great bowling lineup, plenty of power in the batting with Josh Brown, Eason Rahman, and Sabarish Ravichandran. So I'm looking at those guys. They'll be needing those guys to fire, but I reckon they're pretty well set. And I'd like to see someone else win it. I think East Canter have had their fun over the last couple of years, so I think it'd be good to get a new name in the trophy. South Canto were, dominated the tournament in the early years, but fallen on hard times. So I know they'll be pretty motivated. Sabarish will certainly be motivated. I think Brownie, coming off the back of a few low scores last year, will be fired up and ready to go, and hoping he gets more games on SICG one this year because I think all his ducks were on SICG two last year. So he's very top heavy with his SICG one average compared to his SICG two average. But yeah, I like them. I think they'll be good. And there's still no news, unfortunately, since last we spoke on the ACC Women's Premier Cup. No developments there. I think we talked about the Women's Premier League. I think we talked about the Futures League being back to four teams. So yeah, nothing else to cover at this point.
That's it for now. We'll probably look at doing one in a couple of weeks if we have some more news and some club cricket maybe we can talk about in a couple of weeks. And then
Yeah, update on the domestic stuff. All right. Well, thanks, Toddy, as always. And for everyone else, Otskar Samadeshta.